Welcome to Life at the Corner, a podcast sponsored by Cornerstone Presbyterian Church in beautiful downtown Franklin, Tennessee. Now here's your host, Pastor Nate Sheridan.
Well, today, friends, I'm grateful to be back on the podcast and to pick up a theme that we started last week together. The topic of friendship. We began last week talking about the gift of friendship and the importance of friendship as is spoken of in the Bible. And we spent some time looking at the characteristics of the difference between what it means to be a true friend and what it means to be a companion. Why a true friend often sticks closer than even family members, and why having real friends, deep friendships, is the key in many ways to a fulfilling and satisfied life. I want to pick up the theme of friendship again today to talk more about what it means to actually do the work of building friends and maintaining closeness in friendships over the long haul. I'm calling this grit and grace, making and keeping friends, because both of those qualities are needed in the establishment and in the maintaining of friendships. What we need there to be grace. God has to actually gift us with good relationships. And there must be dynamics and there must be a chemistry that brings about something that is sweet and fulfilling. And there's an aspect about it that we just simply can't control. And we're relying upon God's grace for it. But there's also not simply a let go and let God approach to friendships. There is also the work of friendships. There will be grit that is needed, effort, and even labor in maintaining and deepening friendships over the long haul, especially through the ups and downs, and sometimes the spaces in geography and the changes in life that have a tendency to draw friends apart from one another. I want to start by talking today about the grace of friendship and returning in many ways to the book of Proverbs that we were in last week together. The book of Proverbs gives us so much wisdom with regards to friendship, and excerpting some of those sweet counsels from Solomon's pen helps us grow into deeper relationships with one another. One proverb that struck me was Proverbs 27:9 under this subject of the grace of friendship. Proverbs 27:9 says, "The sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel." Now, in looking through some of the commentators on this proverb, I noticed that they made mention of the fact that there were no sweeteners in the day when Solomon was writing Proverbs 27:9. There wasn't refined sugar in the way that we think of it as moderns. Sweeteners, or things that are sweet, had to be found within the integrity of the certain foods or fruits that one might eat. This is often why the psalmist and the Proverbs will speak of honey when it speaks of sweetness, because there's so much natural integrity of sweetness in honey. Solomon's letting us know that friendship is like that. We discover a sweetness about it. There's an integrity to the relationship that draws us into a sweet satisfaction. And notice where that sweetness comes from. It's not just from being in the presence of that person, though of course that's included. It comes in what he refers to as earnest counsel. Now we'll talk a little more about counsel and earnestness a little later in the podcast. But in this context, he's speaking about counsel that is true. Counsel that gives real guidance. Counsel that gives good direction. Two key writings on friendship that I've been mulling over in the course of this podcast has been The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis. I referenced it last time. And there's a chapter where he speaks of philia, or what is called brotherly love. There's also an old 19th century poet that many of you will be familiar with, one of the great transcendentalists, named Ralph Waldo Emerson, who also wrote on the subject of friendship. And I've been returning to his work as well. I found them both very helpful in different ways. But two quotes from those books struck home in this particular point. Ralph Waldo Emerson writes in his work on friendship, He says, friendship does not ask, do you love me? Like Eros often asks. Friendship asks, do you see the same truth? Now, similarly, C.S. Lewis writes that the typical expression of opening of a friendship is something like, what? You too? I thought I was the only one. Lewis goes on to say that lovers are often face to face, enraptured in each other, while friends are more regularly side by side, absorbed in some common interest. Meaning there's some idea, there's some truth, there's some recreation, there's some activity or some practice that draws friends together into friendship. There's something interestingly outside the relationship that makes the relationship a friendship. Now, Lewis goes on in his chapter on philia, and he says, this is why pathetic people who want friends can never usually make any. He says, the very condition for having friends is that you would want something else besides friends. If someone asks you, do you see the same truth? And you're honest in your answer and say, I don't really care about that. I just want you to be my friend. Lewis says that no friendship is likely to arise. There is nothing for the friendship to be about. Those who have nothing, they can share nothing, and those who are going nowhere can't be fellow travelers. All that to say is that Lewis and Emerson are noting the graced quality of friendship, that it has to be in some sense gifted to us. A common interest, a common way of looking at life, noticing the same truth, a similar perspective, a makeup, a chemistry that connects us, where the dynamic simply is right. The reality is, friends often stumble into their friendship through these commonalities and only later look back on the fact that, yes, we indeed are friends. And they realize that this has taken place by focusing very often on something else. However, that's not all that there is to friendship. This grace and this gifted quality that we must actually pursue and ask and seek the Lord for and to be good students of as we're building relationships with others, that is going to require effort. And that is the grit of friendship that I want to spend really the bulk of our time talking about. You see, when you survey the teaching of Proverbs, we find that within the grace of friendship, there is a responsibility. And our wills and our energies must be involved in it. And we've got to strive to nurture godly friendships. It won't just happen. I think that's one of the assumptions of why many of us don't maintain good friendships over time, is we think friendship is just something that's going to happen. And when friendship happens, it's just going to stay the same or always exist in the way that it is. We all here listening today on this podcast, and I can say personally, in my own experience of friendships, that I've had friends who I've been very close to for a period or season in my life, and it was just easy. And then something changed. I moved, I got a different job, I got married, I had children, and I realized that the same people that I was once close to during a particular season, I wasn't as close to them. And now I realize there's an intentionality that's going to be needed to maintain that friendship, to grow it, to deepen it, to enjoy the sweetness of it. And so we've got to think through, what is it going to take, what grit, what energy to maintain healthy relationships and friendships over the long haul. Number one, it's going to require steadfastness. Last week we quoted Proverbs 17:17, a friend loves at all times. Now, what does that mean, to love at all times? Does it mean that friends are always together? Well, no, it doesn't mean that. In fact, Proverbs 25:17 actually warns of friends who are always with each other. I love it. It says, let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he have his fill of you and hate you. I bet we've all had those relationships where that person just kind of loiters around us or is smotheringly close to us and not even giving us the space to be able to create a healthy relationship. That's not what we're looking for. Friends don't always have to be together, though they always enjoy being together. Instead, loving at all times means loving at all kinds of times. When things are good, when things are not good, when you're happy, when you're not sad. No matter how things are with you, a true friend is there and they love you. He or she is always present no matter your frame, no matter your position or circumstance. They're not fair weather friends who are only there when the going is good. No, they're the kind of friends who are able to weep with those who weep as well. And they're the ones that run to you in the midst of suffering and in challenge. They're not put off when you're hard to deal with. They stay close with you. They stick closer than a brother, to go back to the proverb we looked at last week. They're not easily shaken out of the closeness and the intimacy that you enjoy in that relationship. Most people who want to know you because, well, not just because you're useful to them. They want to really know you because you're a loving and worthy to be known person. No one likes to really be connected to people who just want you for the resource that you are. That you're great to have around when times are good, or, hey, I need help on my house, or I have chores to do and you're really helpful. You have people who will call you only when they need something from you. Those are not the people that we are closest to in life. We don't want friends just like that. No, we want friends who are wanting to be with us and aren't looking to us simply to get something from us, but they love being with us in the things that we love and share together as friends. And the deepening and the sweetness and the memories that become the bolt of cloth that is made of deep friendships is something that lasts a long time when we're committed in loving at all times. So steadfastness, it's going to be required if you want to make and keep friends over the long haul. Secondly, there's going to require a carefulness. A carefulness. We've got to be committed to understanding each other personally and having a respect for one another. Proverbs 26:18-19 says, like a madman who throws firebrands and arrows, and death is the man who actually deceives his neighbor and says, I am only joking. Proverbs 27:14 says, whoever blesses his neighbor with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, will be counted as cursing. These proverbs are a little difficult to ascertain right from the very beginning, especially just hearing them over a podcast. They'd be a little challenging to grasp what is it that they're trying to say. But both of these proverbs are putting on display the kind of person who doesn't really know who they're in relationship with. They don't know their friend well enough. They don't know their neighbor well enough to truly care for him in the way that he or she needs to be cared for. For instance, this neighbor tells a joke, but it's not a joke to a friend. They don't receive it as humorous. Or someone startles a neighbor with a loud voice in the morning because they don't know that this man or this woman is not a morning person. And the last thing that they want to hear is a loud voice in the morning. So it's not a blessing to them, it's a curse. As a morning person in my family who is married to someone who's not a morning person and has quite a few children who are not morning people, it has been challenging over the course of my life to learn to have an intimate and deep relationship with those within the confines of my home. I can't be the whistling Dixie, opening the blinds early in the morning person that I want to be. I have to actually learn to love them where they are. There's a carefulness. There's a studiousness in knowing what would register with them as love. Friendship is forged and maintained on knowing and understanding and respecting the peculiar needs and desires of one another. And such knowing and understanding and respecting in action is going to willingly lay aside our own interests at times for the interests of the other. For instance, if we think something is funny but we know our friend doesn't, we restrain ourselves. If we know our friend is not that morning person and needs to get into their second cup of coffee before they're ready for any kind of conversation, then we curb our excitement when we're around them. This kind of understanding and knowledge and carefulness in the way that we speak and behave helps us nurture and maintain close friendships over time. Also, this requires that we would express sincere empathy and harmony with one another when we're going through various ups and downs in life. Proverbs 25:20 Whoever sings songs to a heavy heart is like a one who takes off a garment on a cold day and like vinegar on soda. Now notice this proverb. If someone sings songs, this is the idea of joy or celebration, but they do it to a person with a heavy heart, it's like taking a garment off on a cold day, meaning they were warm, they were comforted, but your song of joy in the midst of their sorrow actually brought a cold wind to them. It became vinegar on soda, meaning it became something sour that would ruin the taste. Friendship is built, you see, on a pacing with one another and learning to bring sincere connection and empathy and harmony to the relationship. When there's a spiritual resonance in the relationship that's playing at the heart of that friendship, we serve to put on a garment. We serve to be a garment to that friend who's cold. We remove vinegar from the soda. It actually has the opposite effect. It's healing to us. If you're a real friend, there's no way you can be happy, you see, when your friend is sad, or vice versa. I love the way David and Jonathan are described. You knew I would have to get there eventually in this two-part podcast. David and Jonathan, this beautiful example of friendship in the Scriptures. We read this in 1 Samuel 18:1. The soul of Jonathan was knit together with David, and he loved him as his own soul. You know, that's that sticking closer than a brother that we talked about last week together. And that sort of sense of carefulness, alongside that steadfastness, are two ingredients in really building and maintaining close friendships. But there's a third one. I'm calling this one integrity. Proverbs 27:5-6 say, better is open rebuke than hidden love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Now, this is the exercise of truth-telling and confrontation in friendship. You see, the realization is the first two, as we think about the chemistry and the dynamic and then the steadfastness and the carefulness, it's all about the closeness. But friends are going to fall out with one another. There's going to be struggle. There's going to be tension. There's going to be confrontation. And friends are those in the midst of those challenges who are compelled to confront each other honestly and loving, to call things out in order to see the other person flourish. Notice, better is an open rebuke than hidden love, meaning to say it's better to tell the truth and confront the other in love rather than do what we often do and say, you know, I love that person so much I wouldn't want to say something that would upset them. No, true love is willing to say the hard thing and to truly even upset them in order to do what's in their best interest. You see, that's when friendship is a true love, because it's actually willing to sacrifice and take a risk for what is going to be best for the other. The same point is really made in reverse in Proverbs 29:5. It says, whoever flatters his neighbor spreads a net for his feet. This is the opposite of integrity. This is when you build up someone with empty words or phrases or affirmations. You avoid the hard stuff and you're making up the good stuff. We've probably all met people who are very, very friendly. They're very, very nice, but you don't really entrust yourself to them. And you can get the sense that their niceness is also a way to kind of keep you at a safe distance. And there are people who don't love us enough to actually unveil their own hearts honestly, nor to speak honestly to us. And for a friendship to really be true love, as the way friendship should be, we've got to cut through false conceptions and we've got to speak with integrity and love in the best interests of another. Think of this, comparing carefulness and integrity for a minute. Kindness without honesty is ultimately deceptive. And honesty without kindness is ultimately going to be destructive. Now, we actually want to bring those realities together in a relationship where we have honesty and kindness working together, because that's where I think deep friendships, abiding friendships can grow. Now, fourth and finally is the word direction. Direction. Proverbs 27:9 says, oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel. Now, we saw that word earnest counsel a little bit earlier. We didn't dig into it too deeply. I want to touch on it here. The language of earnestness carries the idea of something being heartfelt or sincere. It's coming from a real place. And counsel literally means secrets in the context of Proverbs 27. You're telling someone your secrets. We talk about going to a counselor or a therapist, and we go there to talk about secrets or challenging or difficult parts of our life that we wouldn't just share with anyone. It carries the idea of this communion, this friendship, has a kind of confidential communication about it. We're sharing secrets, not in a gossipy way. That's not what I mean. I mean, we're sharing our lives. The secret parts of our lives are coming out into the open in this trusting, loving, honest relationship for the purpose of growth, for the purpose of being directed, for moving into deeper communion. In a sense, the question we must ask ourselves is, who really knows our secrets? Maybe that's a question you should be asking yourself as we're moving through all of these points together today. Who knows your secrets? It should be our friends. Obviously, if you're married, it should be your spouse. Our spouse and the context of our deep romantic loves, the best of them are founded in true and profound friendship. And so they should know our secrets. For friendship to be healthy, we must stand together in conviction and walk together in a complementary fashion. And for friendship to be helpful, there must be this interplay where iron is sharpening iron, as one man sharpens another, as Proverbs 27:17 says. Now, if all this is happening, two things really begin to show up, right? If there is a grace and a dynamic and a chemistry that the Lord has given, and there's a sweetness that He's provided, there's a carefulness and an integrity, there's an honesty and a kindness, there's also a willingness to be confronting and to live towards the best interests of another. If you're doing those things in relationship to others, here's something that's going to happen. Your longing for friendships is going to increase, and your friendship and your intimacy in friendships is going to increase. You're going to experience the fruit of friendship as you live it out in the world with these ingredients, because these ingredients are really what we see beautifully portrayed in the Lord Jesus Christ. You know, He is the greatest of our friends. In fact, He uses that very language to describe His connection to the disciples. And by virtue of that connection to His disciples, as He has shared His own heart with us in the Scriptures and revealed the intimacy and love of His care for us in the cross and in the resurrection, and even today as you're listening to this podcast, as He continues to love you by interceding for you at the right hand of the Father, preparing a place for you, that He might dwell in friendship love with you forever. Jesus says to His disciples in John 15:15, no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what the master is doing. But I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. Indeed, greater love has no one than this, than that someone would lay down his life for his friends. So I hope as we're concluding this two-part podcast that this instruction has inspired you. It's encouraged you. It's helped you evaluate where it is that you are in your friendships. It's given you some guidance and practical instruction about how to build and maintain friendships over the long haul. Maybe it's causing you today to think, how can I grab a meal or grab a cup of coffee with someone? How can I cut out some of the social media in my life and spend a little bit more time rather than viewing friends through a screen or their great life and the way it's happening on Instagram, that I could actually sit down with them and really share heart-to-heart conversations? Maybe you can develop a small band of brothers or band of sisters that you get with on some regular basis in order to share life together, to go do fun things together, to find a common interest that you would you would enjoy together, and to let those friendships develop naturally as you put forth the effort, the grit, and you trust God for the grace. I pray that as you let the information, the instruction, the guidance that we've received through these two podcasts wash over you and into you, that it would cause you to be restless until you have better friends, until you have given forth the energy to actually pursue the kind of intimate relationships that the Lord would have you have, walking side by side with brothers and sisters in Christ. Know that the Lord Jesus Christ today, as the model friend, has given you the grace that you need and the instruction that you need to go out and to begin to take the holy risk of what it means to build good friendships with one another. I look forward to being back with you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Life at the Corner. As always, we love hearing from you. If you have a question or an idea for a topic to address on the podcast, please write to us at lifeatthecorner@cstonepress.org. We look forward to being back with you next week.